Here are the Fantasy Follows top 5 waiver wire players to target for Week 15 of fantasy football. The top player to target this week off the waiver wire is Gus Edwards, running back for the Baltimore Ravens. And again, this week, similar to last week, this is your playoff time. Unless you have a reason not to, don't be afraid to be making these moves. Even if you don't play these players, you're still potentially blocking them from opponents should they have big games. Edwards currently rostered in 33% of all leagues. Now, I know the backfield of Baltimore has been a little muddled this year, but it does seem that J.K. Dobbins and Edwards have kind of separated themselves as the two guys splitting the bulk of the touches. Mark Ingram kind of pulling a little bit of a disappearing act the past couple of weeks. Edwards this last week, 49 yards on 7 rush attempts, 2 touchdowns, 18.3 fantasy points versus the Cleveland Browns. And he did have 101 yards rushing the week before that. And a nice couple of games coming up for Edwards. This week playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, currently allowing the 5th most fantasy points to the running back spot. And then the Giants at the 9th most in the Week 16 for your fantasy football championship. At number 2, it's John Brown, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. Brown has been out injured, currently rostered in 41% of all leagues, but he is eligible to return from IR. And in his last 2 games played, it was 19 targets in those 2 games combined. Not a great couple of games. Denver and New England, they are the 8th fewest and 5th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot, respectively. However, one of your main receivers in an offense that has been scoring points this year, Brown, could have some value for you. Number 3, Rashard Higgins for the Cleveland Browns. Been featured a little bit more in that offense as of late. Currently rostered in 13% of all leagues. 19 targets over the last 2 weeks with 2 touchdowns in that span. This last week, 10 targets, 6 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. That was 18.8 fantasy points versus the Ravens. Number 4, Russell Gage from the Atlanta Falcons, currently rostered in 11% of all leagues. In this situation, if Julio Jones continues to miss time, even the more value for Gage. This last week, 7 targets, 5 catches, 82 yards. Also threw a touchdown, 18.76 fantasy points. And a nice matchup this week playing the Bucs, 11th most fantasy points being allowed to the wide receiver spot. And then Nelson Aguilar in 5th wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. This last week for Aguilar, 9 targets, 5 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown. That was 21.0 fantasy points versus Indianapolis. He has seen 20 targets over his last 2 weeks. And here are some bonus ads this week, starting with Derek Carr, quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. He's currently rostered in 47% of all leagues, but he's got a nice matchup this week playing the Chargers, who are allowing the 9th most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. Carr has averaged 29.29 fantasy points over his last 2 games, 5 touchdowns over that stretch. Philip Lindsay, running back for the Denver Broncos. Now worth monitoring here, Melvin Gordon was banged up in their last game. So if for some reason Gordon cannot go, that certainly makes Lindsay a worthwhile pickup off the waiver wire. He's currently rostered in 44% of all leagues. He may still be available in yours. Kind of the same situation here for Jeff Wilson, running back for the 49ers. Raheem Mostert banged up and in question for this week. Last week, Wilson, 31 yards and a touchdown, 9.4 fantasy points, and he's got a great matchup this week playing the Cowboys, currently allowing the 6th most fantasy points to the running back spot. And then Irv Smith, tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. This last game returning from injury, 4 targets, 4 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. That was 16.3 fantasy points against the Bucs. And again, a nice matchup playing the Bears, currently allowing the 4th most fantasy points to the tight end spot. Getting right down to the wire in your fantasy leagues, be sure to join us every Sunday for the TFF Live Sunday pregame show. We're with you this week and always at 12 noon Eastern time, answering all your fantasy football questions and getting you ready for your matchups each week. And we are the Fantasy Follow. We are a brand new channel this season on YouTube. We thank those of you who've been with us and have helped us get just about halfway to our goal of 100 new subscribers. Be sure and click that subscribe button so that you can get those notifications whenever we have new content. We are also on Twitter at the Fantasy Follow, and that's fantasy spelled FNTSY. And you can send us your fantasy football questions there during the week using the hashtag AskTFFLive, and we'll answer those questions live on our Sunday pregame show. Facebook / The Fantasy Follow, and our website, thefantasyfollow.com.